Hello, and welcome. In our quest for the unknown, we often look for ghosts or hunt for phantoms. But sometimes, the most profound mysteries are not invisible. They are carved in stone, standing 10 meters tall, and waiting for us on the most remote island on the planet. Today, we travel to a lost paradise to hear its warning. This is the story of Easter Island's silent sentinels, the rise and fall of the Rapa Nui. In the vast, empty expanse of the southeastern Pacific Ocean, there is a speck of land so isolated that it defies comprehension. It is a tiny triangle of volcanic rock over 2,000 kilometers from the nearest inhabited landmass and nearly 4,000 kilometers from the coast of South America. Its inhabitants called it Rapa Nui. The first Polynesian settlers who arrived called it Tepito o Tehenua, the navel of the world. We know it as Easter Island. To arrive here is to feel as if you have reached the very edge of the earth. The landscape is stark and beautiful, a windswept expanse of grassy hills, volcanic craters, and dramatic sea cliffs. But dominating this lonely landscape are the silent, brooding figures that have made this island a global icon of mystery, the Moai. Hundreds of these colossal stone statues stand guard across the island. Some are arranged in neat rows atop massive stone platforms called ahu, their backs turned to the unforgiving sea, watching over the land. Others lie scattered, toppled, and broken, casualties of a forgotten war. Still more remain in the quarry where they were born, half-finished figures emerging from the bedrock, their creation halted in a moment of sudden crisis. These stone giants are the relics of a remarkable and ultimately tragic civilization. They pose some of archaeology's greatest questions. Who built them? How did they move them? And what catastrophe befell the people who dedicated their lives to creating them? A catastrophe that turned a thriving paradise into a barren wasteland. To find the answers, we must travel back in time, to roughly 1,000 years ago. Long before European explorers had mapped the globe, the greatest navigators the world has ever known, the Polynesians, were settling the vast Pacific. Using only the stars, the currents, and the flight of birds, they sailed across thousands of kilometers of open ocean in double-hulled canoes. Sometime between 800 and 1200 AD, a small group of these intrepid explorers landed on the shores of Rapa Nui. What they found must have seemed like paradise. Scientific analysis of ancient pollen records has revealed a world vastly different from the island we see today. Rapa Nui was a lush, subtropical haven. It was covered by a dense forest of giant palm trees, a species now extinct, some reaching over 20 meters in height. Isolated from the rest of humanity, for several centuries, their population grew and their culture flourished. They were master stoneworkers, and they directed this skill towards a singular, all-consuming obsession: the carving of the Moai. The Moai are monolithic human figures, carved from the volcanic tuff of a single quarry on the slopes of the Rano Raraku volcano. This place, known as the Nursery, is one of the most incredible archaeological sites on Earth. Over 400 statues remain here, in various stages of completion. The statues themselves are highly stylized, with long noses, strong chins, and elongated earlobes. They are not just heads, they are full figure representations, though many are buried up to their shoulders, giving rise to the popular misconception. Most archaeologists agree that the Moai were representations of deified ancestors. They were physical embodiments of the mana, or spiritual power, of the ruling chiefs and their lineages. Placed upon the Ahu platforms, which served as sacred ceremonial sites, the Moai faced inland, overlooking the villages of their descendants, watching over them, protecting them with their spiritual power. The scale of this undertaking is staggering. The average Moai stands about 4 meters tall and weighs around 12.5 tons. The largest ever erected, a giant known as Paro, was almost 10 meters tall and weighed over 82 tons. The largest ever carved, the unfinished El Gigante, remains in the quarry and would have been over 21 meters tall and weighed an estimated 270 tons. The Rapa Nui people achieved this with no metal tools, no wheels, and no draft animals. They used handheld stone tools called toki to chip away at the volcanic rock, a process that would have taken a team of carvers years for a single statue. This leads us to the first great mystery. How did they transport these multi-ton behemoths from the quarry at Rano Raraku to Ahu platforms all across the island, some over 18 kilometers away? For decades, the prevailing theory was that they used a system of log rollers. The island's once abundant palm trees would have been felled and used as rollers and levers to move the statues on wooden sledges. This method seems plausible and was famously demonstrated by explorer Thor Heyerdahl in the 1950s. However, a more recent and compelling theory, supported by archaeological evidence and the island's own oral traditions, suggests a different method. The legends of the Rapa Nui people speak of the Moai walking to their destinations. This was long dismissed as myth, but archaeologists Terry Hunt and Carl Lipo have argued that it was a literal description. By studying the design of the statues, their forward-leaning posture and D-shaped bases, they propose that the Rapa Nui used ropes and a small, coordinated team to rock the statues from side to side, inching them forward in a walking motion. In 2012, a National Geographic-sponsored experiment proved this was possible, successfully walking a 5-ton replica Moai several hundred meters. This method was also more efficient and required far less wood than the log roller theory. For generations, the Rapa Nui civilization was a success story. Their population may have reached a peak of 15,000 people. Their obsession with statue building was a source of cultural pride and spiritual security. But this obsession would become their downfall. The society was divided into competing clans, each one trying to outdo the others by erecting bigger, more elaborate, and more numerous moai to demonstrate their clan's superior mana. This rivalry created a voracious, unsustainable demand for resources. The primary resource was the one they could not replace: the forest. Every stage of the moai building process required wood and rope, which was made from tree fibers. Wood was needed for fuel, for tools, and for building the canoes necessary for deep-sea fishing. As the obsession intensified, the felling of the great palm trees accelerated. Slowly, inexorably, they chopped down their entire forest. The consequences were catastrophic, a cascade of ecological collapse. Without the trees, the fertile volcanic soil, no longer held in place by roots, eroded and washed into the sea. The springs and streams dried up. Without the forest canopy, the island became a harsh, wind-swept grassland. The loss of the trees also meant the loss of dozens of land and seabird species that nested there, a vital food source. Most critically, without large logs, they could no longer build the sturdy canoes needed to hunt for porpoises and large fish offshore. Their diet was drastically reduced, and they became trapped on their isolated, dying island. The paradise was lost. What followed was a descent into chaos. As resources dwindled and starvation set in, the complex society of the Rapa Nui collapsed into brutal civil war. The archaeological record from this period shows a sharp increase in weapons like obsidian spearheads, known as mataa. Oral traditions speak of widespread warfare and even cannibalism. The spiritual collapse followed the ecological one. The ancestors, the great moai who were supposed to protect them, had failed. The mana was gone. In a final, desperate act of rage and disillusionment, the warring clans began to systematically topple each other's statues. This was the era of Huri Moai, the toppling of the gods. They would pull the statues down from their ahu, often face down in the dirt, to symbolically blind them. Some were deliberately broken. The silent sentinels that had watched over their people for centuries were now disgraced and abandoned. Out of the ashes of the Moai culture arose a new, desperate belief system. the Birdman cult. Centered at the ceremony #meta. This new cult replaced ancestor worship with a brutal annual competition. Each year, champions from each clan would compete to scale the treacherous sea cliffs, swim through shark-infested waters to a nearby islet, and retrieve the first egg of the sooty tern. The winner's clan would rule the island for the next year, controlling what few resources remained. It was a ritual born of desperation, a last-ditch effort to impose order on a broken society. When the first European visitor, Dutch Admiral Jacob Roggeveen, landed on the island on Easter Sunday, 1722, giving it the name we use today, he was utterly bewildered. He saw a barren, treeless island, inhabited by a small, impoverished population living in squalor. Yet all around them stood these magnificent, colossal statues, a clear sign of a sophisticated, powerful civilization that had vanished. He could not reconcile the destitute people he saw with the genius of the architects who had created the Moai. The final blows came in the 19th century. European diseases, and most devastatingly, Peruvian slave raids, kidnapped a huge portion of the remaining population, including the elders who held the last knowledge of their culture and the still undeciphered Rongo-Rongo script. By 1877, only 111 Rapa Nui people were left on the island. The story of Easter Island is more than just a fascinating archaeological mystery. It is one of the clearest and most terrifying examples of ecocide in human history. It is a microcosm of our own planet. The Rapa Nui people were a clever, industrious society who, through a combination of cultural ambition and a lack of foresight, consumed their resources until there was nothing left, leading directly to their own demise. They were trapped on their island, just as we are all trapped on ours. The Moai, in their silent, brooding majesty, are not just relics of a lost civilization. They are sentinels, watching us from across the centuries. Their story is a warning, carved in stone, of what happens when a society's ambition outstrips the capacity of its environment. They stand as a timeless, tragic lesson from a paradise that was lost.